Hello and welcome to this week's The Courageous Leaders Club. And I am delighted and honoured to have the brilliant Rania Robinson with us, CEO of Quiet Storm. Welcome, Rania. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's brilliant. So I'm just going to give a quick introduction so that people know what you're going to be able to offer and the golden insights in this interview today, because you are the CEO of Quiet Storm. But before that, you kind of had a bit more of a non-traditional agency background, but have worked on some incredible brands. I've got listed here like 3 Mobile, Mercedes, Stella Artois, Coca Cola, and Innocent. I'd love to have worked with Innocent. Like incredible, but focusing on brand building and experience. And what is, so wonderful is you are featured in Campaign's A-list of the most influential industry figures. 2020 was shortlisted for Creative Pool's top 100 influencers, and also is a very active member of WACL. I know you've done a lot of work helping gender equality with diversity, and that you're a regular commentator on BBC and have, which is one of my goals, had lots of blogs posted in the Huffington Post as well. So huge congratulations, fantastic the work you've done, and a real privilege to have your time today. Now, all the people I ask first as we start here, because this is the Courageous Leaders Club and our purpose is to inspire leaders to step into their courageous zone. What for you is courageous leadership? What does it mean to you?
I think it's kind of allowing yourself to be vulnerable. I think that's probably one of the most, important and significant qualities of being a good leader, because there's almost every aspect of leadership requires an element of vulnerability in my mind. Stepping out of your comfort zone. Always, that makes you feel uncomfortable, and growth comes with stepping out of your comfort zone. Like acknowledging when you don't know something and knowing that you need to ask, or recognizing when you need help, I think is really important as well. It's all part of growth. Being willing to say, I don't have the answers, and almost everything. I think recognizing and accepting a sort of, accepting your failures and knowing kind of, that can be a really difficult thing to kind of deal with. And I think that all comes with you need to make yourself vulnerable with all of those things, I think. So I'd say that's probably one of the
big things.
Important.
Are you curious, are you a fan of Brené Brown's?
I absolutely am, actually. And I was listening to her over the weekend. She talks all about vulnerability, doesn't she? She's incredible.
So inspiring, and I'd recommend anyone watching this to watch her Netflix documentary at the moment, which I think is Courage for All, or The Courage to Leave, or something. But I'm just curious, actually, where you mentioned vulnerability, what do you think stops people being vulnerable?
It's fear, isn't it? It's fear of coming across like you don't. I think there's so much, and this is a very old and out of date view of leaders, of always having the answers, tower of strength and capability. And I think it's all the ego stuff. It's all the stuff that makes you feel that you're not good enough, or because we have these ridiculous expectations of what a good leader looks like and how we define good leaders. And I think thankfully we're sort of starting to tear some of those stereotypes or views down now. But it is fear. I think a lot of it comes from a fear, and I think that's one of the biggest barriers to success is fear.
Yeah, and getting stuck in your own head, isn't it, of what you think you should be, rather than just be yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you say all those old stereotypes. So just interesting, kind of so many things. If we could just allow that vulnerability, then what could be possible for us all to achieve, I think would be wonderful. And I know you've had, weren't born in the UK. You've got an incredibly interesting story of, where you started to where you are now. Would you mind sharing some of that? Because it's very inspiring.
Yeah, so I came over to England when I was very little, and I think I was 3 when I came with my family. We came from Egypt. My family are Muslim. It's not a faith that I've continued with, but it's fundamental to my family and my heritage, and being born in Egypt. And I came to England very young. I started school at the age of, I think, probably 4. It would have been nursery school. I'm a summer baby, so I was a young starter anyway. And I'd gone straight from sort of the family environment into school, and I'd gone to, we grew up in a place called Salisbury in Wiltshire, which is a very quintessentially British place. And I went to a Roman Catholic school, ironically, which, you know, my mum and dad wanted me in an environment that had faith. And,
Yeah.
you know, obviously in the Wiltshire, you're not going to get many there's no Muslim community, there's no, you know,
No.
mosques or anything like that, or schools of that type. So I went to a Roman Catholic school in a very quintessentially British place. So you can imagine how completely out of place I felt in that environment. And it's daunting for any child starting school, you know,
Yeah.
your first day at school. But for somebody who doesn't speak the language, who's very, very conscious of their difference,
Yeah.
you know, the religious background and not speaking English. So for me, it's I barely remember that shift from starting school and then speaking the language. It was it's very quick, but you don't ever forget that feeling of coming into an environment where you're very, very conscious that you're different, and you're very conscious that you can't actually communicate in the traditional way with your peers. And so I think that for me, that was a really sort of significant moment for me in terms of my what's defined and influenced a lot of my values and a lot of my approaches to work, really. And it's quite interesting that I should end up in an industry that's all about communication.
Yes.
when I started life off in this country, not being able to communicate. And I think there's probably no coincidence there, actually.
Yeah.
And I think it has very much influenced the way I do connect with people. And you know, when you've had to grow up in a way where you have to assimilate, you have to understand people, you have to find those moments of connection, you have to have almost like an instinctive insight into ways that you can fit in and be accepted. And I think that's created I've always had a fascination with human behavior and psychology and why we do the things we do, and I think again that's come from this kind of real desire to want to connect and fit in. And I think that's played a really strong role in my leadership, the way I operate as a leader. So much of it is about people. Everything we do is about people, actually.
Yes.
It's your teams, your clients, how you influence consumers through the work that you do. So almost everything comes back to understanding and you know, having that real connection and human understanding. And I think a lot of that has come from my background. It's become a bit of a key sort of quality, I think, that's
because it's so interesting, because so many people, you know, feel that problem of fitting in or not belonging. And, you know, you really had it. You couldn't speak the language, but what a gift to, you know, would you say you're actually very good at reading people?
Oh, definitely. That absolutely. That's what you learn. You have to.
Yeah.
If you've got non-verbal communication is probably the most powerful thing, particularly when you're doing things which we do all the time. When you're in pitch meetings, you're in chemistry meetings, you're trying to influence a client, you're trying to the non-verbal stuff, reading between the lines, that kind of sense of it is so important and fundamental in what we do. And of course, that's something I learned to hone instinctively, very, very, very young. So and it doesn't really leave you for many parts of your years. Even once you start speaking the language, you're still conscious that you are very, very different. I grew up in an environment where there were not other people like me. You know, it's so I was constantly, whatever situation I was being put in throughout my years, I was constantly in situations where there was nobody else that looked like me, that had the similar family background to me, that kind of the religious background. So it's something that you it's a superpower, I think. And finding those barriers, those what maybe early experiences or life experiences that were at a time barriers or challenges, finding ways to turn those into strengths and superpowers, I think it's a brilliant opportunity. As challenging as it might have been at that time, it's still a massive opportunity.
And seeing it as in, you know, using my coaching terms here, like you fixed and growth mindset, seeing it as the opportunity, as you said, even though it is challenging, but seeing like, how can I use this? How has this helped me? Where's that gift in that? I think is fantastic. I know when I was younger, I was so shy, but that actually made me a really good listener, because I just listened to everybody. So as you said, it's looking back at those moments that you learn that actually, and I think so many people I work with don't know what their superpowers are, because to them it's just normal. But when you go, no,
absolutely,
you're great at that, and they're like, really? Am I? And I'm like, oh my God, yeah. So it is, isn't it? Own that superpower,
Yeah.
and then how you can leverage that to kind of really then help other people find theirs. So I think that's a brilliant message. Thank you. And then that kind of led you on into kind of going into the industry, and you went in. I think I was listening to your story earlier, and it was so. I said I was like listening to my own story. No degree. You didn't do the degree. You went into an agency as a secretary, exactly the same as me, and worked your way up. What was that like for you? And what was then key in the future and the development of that?
Yeah, so I had a really sort of strange relationship with education, to be honest with you, because my mum and dad and actually again coming to the culture, they're got very a strong emphasis on education in the kind of Muslim and Egyptian culture. There's a lot of get a proper job, which is a proper job is a lawyer or a doctor or a teacher or classic kind of academic professions. And both my parents were academically driven. My whole family actually followed more of a classic academic sort of route. And I always felt that wasn't right for me. I went to a grammar school. I went to a very good classic academic school, but they didn't support any of the arts. They didn't support any of the creative subjects. And actually, despite it being considered what would be considered a good school, but a good school is only as good as it is for the person in the school, isn't it? And if it's the wrong fit, it's not, it wasn't a good school for me. It might have performed brilliantly in the classic sense, but it didn't support me because I was obviously clearly had a much more creative leaning, but there was nothing like that available in this school. They supported all the kind of classic subjects. So I had a real sort of disconnection to my early life education. And I was clearly bright. I'd got into the school. It was, academically driven, but they lost me in the process. So I couldn't wait to get out of school. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do because I had no inspiration. I knew I didn't want to be a doctor or a teacher or do any of that. And I had no exposure outside of what I saw on TV. Yeah. I had no real exposure to the creative industries. And I kind of felt like that's another world that's happening kind of in another alternate universe. I grew up in Sussex. I was like, where is this stuff happening? And then I moved to London when I was 16. And it was at that point, that I decided to do more of a vocational sort of course, because I thought I was kind of quite strategic even then, because I knew I kind of didn't want to do that, but I wasn't exactly sure what. But I thought I want to do something creative. And once we were in London, I was thinking, okay, this is kind of where it's all happening. This is where the media world is. And so I thought, well, I'll get a secretarial course under my belt, and that means I can get into any organization, because everyone needs secretaries, and they did then.
That was my strategy.
Yeah, so I was quite sort of strategic about it, even though I didn't really quite know. And then I worked at a music publishing company first, and then from there I went to Virgin Media, which was a kind of film distribution. It was one of Richard Branson's early companies. And so, and then I sort of spent a bit of time in the sales. I was in the sales department. Could see we worked very closely with the marketing department. I was like, oh no, the marketing looks like where it's at. Those guys look like they're having more fun. So I then just went to a recruitment agency and said I want to go into a marketing organization and do a secretarial job at a marketing organization. And at that point, I didn't really know the difference between an agency or a brand side marketing role. I just sort of had the sort of umbrella term marketing. And then I ended up in an agency, and I was just so inspired. It was at that point that I thought, oh my God, this is it. This is what I want to do. And I used to type up the presentations that the guys put together, the pitches, and I used to just love reading them. And I was so inspired by the ideas, by the strategy, by all of it. Was it. And I was like, this is it. I've kind of found my thing.
Brilliant.
And it was at that point that I just was, once I kind of had a direction of travel, I was just completely single-minded and bullish about it. And actually I faced a lot of challenges because the agency I was at the time had a very strict policy that, account handlers had to have had 3 years experience a university degree and 3 years experience, of which I had in an account handling role, which I had neither. So I just had to really put myself out there and just make myself almost like just, I did my job and then I did everything else. So I put myself forward for anything and everything, and became almost like a kind of like indispensable resource to the account teams. And we were a growing agency, and they almost couldn't hire people quick enough. So they kind of had all this sort of extra overflow of work. And I was like, I'll do that. And I just ended up I did obviously work a lot of crazy hours, but I just made myself available to a point where I just couldn't be ignored. And even though actually I still faced quite a lot of barriers within that organization, I'd managed to get myself enough experience and exposure through sheer volunteering and extra work that I was able to go on to another agency where I could be kind of recognized for the work I'd put in. So, but it taught me a lot in terms of how you also just finding people that are going to help you, understanding who are going to be mentors to you, who can be kind of champions for you within the business. And I found those people, and actually they went on to employ me later on in other agencies that they went on to found. And so you learn a lot of skills again, where you have to, when you've got to do that extra graft in a way that your kind of education isn't enough to kind of get you the job, or you become a little bit more kind of scrappy and entrepreneurial in how you do things. And for me as well, just what I hadn't realized was, again, like typing those presentations relentlessly for 2 or 3 years or however long I was doing it, I was subconsciously learning how to put a good pitch together, and how to judge a good idea, and how to understand strategy, and how you set up a strategy before, and how that leads into an idea. So actually, finding opportunities to learn in what appear to be the most mundane of tasks is something, again, that I've learned through coming at it in a more challenging and a less conventional way.
And it's just crazy, because it's like listening to my own story. And I've not actually met anyone who had a similar background. For you, because I've always kind of tried to reflect on me, what was it, do you think, in you that you had that allowed yourself to kind of say yes to those opportunities, grab them, see them, know it was an opportunity? What do you think is kind of in you that enabled you to be able to think that way and see them?
I think, to be honest with you, I do think early life experiences where you've just had to not survive, but to fit in. And for us, fitting in is survival, really. It's human instinct to want to belong. That I think when you are from an early age, you've had to put yourself out there. You've had to put yourself in situations where you don't feel completely comfortable, or you've had to work that bit harder to be accepted. I think that just comes naturally. I've learned those skills. I learned those skills from a very young age. So it came very naturally to me to be in environments where I am being sort of having to prove myself. I'm having to, kind of fit in and find a way to assimilate and find a way to kind of, so I guess it just became second nature to me.
If there was someone listening now going, okay, well, I haven't had that quite life experience. I did get my degree, so I did get in quite easily. What would you, but they haven't yet been able to have that sort of more entrepreneurial script to kind of grab things. They're playing it maybe a bit safe right now. You've come the other way. Is there anything in what you go in terms of then the advice you'd give them if they haven't got that life experience or needed to prove in, it actually has been quite, nothing's ever easy, but they've had a bit more seamless way in.
Yes.
What would be your advice?
I think everyone faces challenges I think it'll be different sets of challenges, but I think allowing yourself to be vulnerable, saying yes to everything. I mean, even now I say yes to everything. There's been so many things in my career that I've gone, oh my God, that is absolutely terrifying, but I'll do it. Okay, I'll do it. And then I'll just figure it out afterwards. And I think it's so easy to say no to things when you because it's frightening. It's like, even things like this, to be honest with you, I mean, it's putting yourself out there, having a voice, putting your feelings and early life, like out there for the world. It's really quite scary. And it doesn't ever stop being scary. Every pitch, every chemistry meeting, every job, for whatever job interview, new roles, it doesn't ever stop being scary. If you're growing and you're pushing yourself, it doesn't ever stop being scary. And I think for me, that's why I started with the vulnerability, because you have to be vulnerable to put yourself in a situation where you're going to grow. And I think I would say that it doesn't matter what experiences, even if you've had easier, more privileged, maybe more classically privileged or traditional routes in, we're all going to be put in situations that make us feel uncomfortable in some shape or form. And all the same rules apply. Is you just got to take a breath and dive in, basically, and just And
Go
I've
for it.
got a terrible fear of failure, if I was honest. That doesn't
Okay.
leave.
Yeah.
I have got a terrible fear of failure, but I still, I recognize that you can't succeed without failure, and actually you learn from those experiences. And I think it's
Yeah.
not about not feeling the fear. And I know this sounds like such an American cliche, but it's about feeling it but doing it anyway. And I do think that is so. It's recognizing that you are scared and but you're going to do it, and actually more often than not, it's fine. It works out. You rise to the challenge, and you know what? Sometimes maybe that doesn't go your way, but no one's going to die. It's
No. And it's trusting you can handle it. And it's a similar thing. My mentor was a wonderful person to say, Joe, say yes and then work out how.
Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
amount of times I've gone, yes. Oh my God.
I know. Yeah.
Why did I say yes? Oh my God. And then it's that thing of, and it's quite interesting. It's like when they say set your goals, but an interesting term. A lot of people, if it's a goal that requires you to put your big pants on, then you know it's a goal that you really need to go for. If it stirs up a bit of fear, then that is where you should go, because otherwise, as you said, you just stay safe. And it's how you see fear and failure as you said, the opportunity for growth versus keeping you stuck to where you are.
Yeah.
If you want to stay where you are, that's totally cool. But if you want that success and to keep going, you've got to keep moving forward. And as you said, I know there's my mom, like, as you said, it doesn't stop, joining the golf club, learning golf in front of like a committee of women that she's never, everything. It doesn't matter what age you are, there's something new for you to overcome and learn and move forward on. So I think that's brilliant. The last bit I'd love to talk to you about is something that's really relevant, what's going on today. I've actually had, surprisingly, 4 very similar conversations this week, speaking to leaders, but also the level beneath the leader, who they're literally getting to a point where teams are just burning out. There's a bit of a revolving door of people leaving at the moment. That was actually a term given to me by one of these people. It's like a revolving door at the moment. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give when you can see, as a leader, you can see your team's burning out? You've got numbers to hit, but you can see the team has had it enough. That they're looking to you now to do something.
Yeah.
What advice, what insights have you got to help leaders at the moment? Because I think there's a hell of a lot of people going through this right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest with you, I think it's balancing sustainable growth with, staff welfare. I think the challenge comes when there's, as a business, you're single-mindedly focused on growth at all costs. And I think what that forces you to do is make certain decisions that aren't always in the best interests of a healthy, sustainable business in terms of staff welfare and actually, in some cases, even healthy business welfare. I think we're so obsessed with kind of growth at all costs. And I think sometimes turnover doesn't always equal profit. And you can have huge turnover and be a hugely scaled business, but it doesn't mean you're a profitable, sustainable, healthy business. So I think for us we're very particular about kind of our priorities as an organization and we're very values driven, and we're a purpose-led business. And actually part of our values is sustainable, healthy growth, but not at the cost of staff happiness. And if that's at your core of your business, you weigh things up. You weigh up what you're willing to accept and put up with from clients. And actually, if you're a big business that you're trying to feed a machine, it's not always necessarily about size, but you do find yourself in a position where you're having to take stuff on that you might that go against those kind of core values. If growth is your core focus, that's going to define everything you do, and that will be more important. Growth and margins more important than values and I think for us it's we just stay centered with our values, and it sort of defines our priorities and how we work with our clients, what we take on, the types of brands and types of clients we work with, and that is all impacts on your culture, and it all impacts on your the way you approach success. I guess it's how you define success. And I think for us it's about doing work we're really proud of, having really fulfilled and content staff, and making a decent living, because we're not but it's not growth and profit at all costs, really. And I think I mean, don't get me wrong, we have challenging periods like any business, and it's not to say that there aren't times when our staff don't work weekends and they don't do late nights, but it's not that's just not our general
Yeah.
way of operation, operators, whatever it is, when you just operate modus operandus or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's if they are for periods of time that pass, and we're very, very conscious to make sure we give that time back. If people work weekends, we give that time back. If they're consistently working long hours, we make sure that they get that time back. So I think it's recognizing there will be times as a business that you've got to put those hours in, but they're not consistent. I think it's when it's consistently relentless, and actually it's really counterproductive, because what ends up happening is the work suffers. You lose staff, and actually it's a false economy. It's a very short-term goal, and yes, you might see success in the short term, but you don't see it ultimately in the long run.
No. So, and I think the challenge right now with trying to attract great talent and the cost at the moment to get great talent, I think we're all very aware of. It's looking after who you have. And I know there's some people I'm speaking to that I know if they left, that company would be devastated. We're talking about
disruptive. It's very disruptive to a business when you lose good people.
And it's like your star players, they're at the point now of having enough.
Yeah.
So something's got to change. And just a bit of advice I was giving a team yesterday was it's not enough just to acknowledge it. You can't just say, look, yes, we're aware it will get better, and not thanking them all. That's not enough at the moment. They need to see that some action's being taken, that there's some boundaries being put in place of what you're saying yes and no to, and that you're thinking of their well-being first, not, as you said, filling the pockets first.
Yeah,
and absolutely. I really do believe it's the companies that think about their people are the ones that are going to come through this really well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think more so than ever now, because I think people are really re-evaluating kind of, I mean, this has been going on for a long time, but I think COVID was a big accelerator of so many things that have been sort of trends that are happening. It's just accelerated. And I think one of the things, people are really evaluating what they want out of life. And it's not, it's not all about, climbing the career ladder and, earning the highest salary you can. People want a fulfilling life. They want to work for a business that they believe in, that's got a strong sense of values and purpose, and that sort of respect and nurture their growth as much as the business's growth. And that's the thing. And like I said, it is sort of counterproductive. It's unsustainable. I think that's really what we're finding. It's what you were looking at sustainability across so many aspects of life now, and that is an unsustainable kind of work culture, which people are just not willing to do it anymore, and certainly not to make somebody else rich.
No, that awareness is very prevalent at the moment. It's kind of, it's like, take care of your people, and the people will take care of your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the way it goes. The question I always love to finish on is, especially for the people with us, what would be a piece of advice that you would love? You can look at it at two frames, either to have given your younger self or to be giving people who are now entering the business now. What is it in all the things you've learned that you would love to pass on?
I mean, believe in yourself, I think, is probably the single most important thing. And I think there's definitely been times where I haven't had that self-belief. And I think one of the biggest barriers to our own success is the negative narrative that we have in our own minds. And often it is, I can't do it. I don't, I'm not good enough. All these reasons why it's not going to work out. And I think for me, that is the single, I know it's like a state of mind, headset, how you frame things, how you see the world, how you project out. It's so much of that is about the kind of the chat that goes on in your head. And I think for me, my biggest regrets or failures or have been around where I've not believed in myself. You're almost your own kind of saboteur, really, when you're allowing those negative narratives to take over.
Completely. And then when I learned all the human behavior stuff I've learned, when someone said to me, Jo, you're in charge of this, I was like, oh God, yeah. Like you drive a car, you put it in the right gears or where you want to go. You're in charge of this. Whatever thoughts you come up, you're in charge of how you respond or you react to that thought. And I was like, oh wow, I am the boss. Here we go. I'm going to start getting back in charge of my mind, because it's your thoughts create your behaviors, which then create your experiences. So you start to master your thoughts, and you be the boss of your thoughts. Oh gosh, what you can achieve then, and then saying yes and working out how each time it gets a bit easier.
Absolutely. I think it's the single most transformative thing that I've experienced is having the right headset, going in with a positive mindset. and a sense of self-belief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that definitely comes from, just to kind of close on the message we were talking about before, having that headset in that right place does come a lot from self-care as well.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah, definitely.
If you're not looking after yourself, if you're not
Yeah.
sleeping, you're working too many hours, you're
Yeah.
stressed, you're worried, it's
Yeah.
very difficult to get the right headset on.
Yeah.
And it's too easy then to listen to the wrong radio channel in your head telling you it's not enough.
Yeah.
So listening here, self-care, number one, straight off will help you have that belief that you need to have the success and to step into your courageous zone, because that's where we really want to help people get to, and especially where leadership is now moving into the future. Rania, thank you. Is there any final words you'd like to close before we say goodbye?
No, just thank you for having me. And yeah, that's it, really.
It's been an absolute pleasure. So much learning, and thank you for listening, and tune in for the next Courageous Leaders Club. Thank you all. Take care. Bye.